Hello everyone. Today I'll be looking at some openings for a change, and we'll actually be dealing with an opening that's been getting really popular lately. So I'm sure you have seen this on the internet. This opening from Black. It's a gambit called the Stafford Gambit. So it's reached after e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6. So it starts with a Petrov defense for Black, where instead of defending this pawn black counterattacks white's e pawn, and the main line for white goes capture the pawn, and then usually they play with d6, knight f3, uh, knight takes e4, and so on. But the Stafford Gambit basically involves black just giving up this e5 pawn and not trying to get back white's e pawn. And here they play knight c6. Now, this has been, I think, popularized by I am Eric Rosen and I guess some other uh, popular YouTube personalities, chess personalities. And yeah, and it's actually a good practical weapon for black that's been scoring quite well. I've faced it in Blitz, and I'm sure if you play often online, you have been facing it lately. And so I've been thinking about, coming up with some kind of an antidote to this gambit because I really, looking at this position, I cannot believe that this position where black just gave up this e5 pawn, I cannot believe that white is just worse, which of course he isn't. And if he plays correctly, he should be able to make use of his extra pawn and, hopefully have good chances of winning the game. So, before I get to my antidote, which I do have one, I would like to show you why this Stafford Gambit is even something we are discussing, like what might happen to a white player who does not know what to do. So in this case, we are looking at a game between these two players. You can see the names at the top. Uh, I think Seem Van Deel and Victoria Radeva. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, and I apologize to the players. And this was a this was a game, sorry, played in 2020 in the Novi Sad tournament, and it's played between master level players. White is rated 2341 and black is rated 2274. So not patzers by any means. They are strong players, strong masters. Not IM or GM, but definitely strong master level players. Okay, so let's see how this game goes. White does a logical thing. His e pawn is attacked, so develops a knight and defense. What could be more natural than that? Okay, black's develops pretty normal, taking away the option of going d4, developing the bishop actively. Okay, so bishop e2, getting ready to castle. Yeah, perfect. Black plays this weird move h5. So already we can see black is starting to let's say try to drum up some play. And if you look at this position, like going back one step, like why is this gambit even getting popular and what's positive about it? If you think about it, what's great is in return for the pawn, black gets free development for his pieces. Like his bishop on c8 became open, his bishop on c5, f8, sorry, can develop in one move. The queen, much more active than white's queen. White's pieces are all pretty much boxed in. Not a single piece has moved, and like other than this e2 bishop and the queen to some extent, nothing else can move much. So basically, yeah, that's what black is going for. Some quick development and use that advantage to create some threats, especially against white's king, as we'll see. So white plays h3. He's kind of sensing that black doesn't intend to castle and wants to use this h-file rook to go either knight g4, combining with the bishop, uh, combining some pressure on f2, or maybe bishop g4. So some ideas. So white decides to shut it down. Queen d4. Okay, threatening mate in one. Simple enough. We castle. knight g4 anyway. Okay, so black says, take my piece. I don't care. I'm going to take on f2 next. Okay, white takes him up on the challenge. Black simply recaptures. So now white is, I think, one piece and a pawn up, the pawn that he won on the second move of the game. Um, okay, g3. Well, g3 is basically to stop black playing g3 because black was sort of threatening pawn to g3 himself using this pin on this diagonal. Okay, so g3 makes sense. Queen e5, centralized queen, creating the threat of queen takes g3 using this pin on the bishop against the f2 pawn. King g2, defending the g3 pawn, and bolt out of the blue. Bishop takes f2. Well, the obvious threat of queen g3 mate. Queen g3 checkmate is threatened, so this has to be taken. And now the queen swings over, and lo and behold, the queen is threatening queen h2, and there just happens to be no good way to stop it, and white resigned. Yeah, so that's what can happen with the Stafford Gambit if you don't know what to do. So now that I've presented a good case for the Stafford Gambit, let's talk about what to do against it. Because as I promised in the introduction to this video, I will, try to give you an antidote which should give you the confidence to play against the Stafford and hopefully beat it. Give it the beating it deserves. Yes. Okay, so let's look at the line I'm proposing. Okay, so we get started with the Petrov. We take the pawn, and here comes the Stafford. So of course we have to accept this. We cannot get anywhere, uh, great by just retreating with our knight. Let's be brave and accept the gambit. Okay, and now the move that I am proposing. This is important that you remember this, and of course you can watch this video again. Our e-pawn is hanging, and usually what people do is try to defend this e-pawn using either d3 or knight c3 as we saw in the game. But what I'm saying is, black already has a position which is very active, right? As I pointed out, the bishop can come out, the other bishop can come out. We saw the queen has more mobility than the white queen. And what I would like to do is, instead of going on the defensive, go on the offensive by pushing this pawn forward, attacking the knight. Okay, so the knight is attacked. It most probably needs to move. So the aggressive Stafford Gambit players, would like to justify their gambit because they are one pawn down. And if they do something, tame like knight d5, yeah, we are just simply gonna, strengthen our center, develop our bishop castle, and then we'll say at some point decide to kick out this knight, and we'll be just clearly better. So if black wants to do something aggressive and try to prove compensation for his sacrificed pawn, uh, or shall we say blundered pawn, uh, he has to do something aggressive. So two moves that really can be tried are knight e4 or knight g4. Let's look at knight g4. Threatening this pawn. Okay. Now the key move. This is one of the main reasons why the Stafford, this is a good antidote. If you notice, you can do your own research on this, but usually a lot of the threats in the Stafford are associated with this move, bishop coming out to c5, and threats against the f2 square. So we are stopping all these threats cold turkey. We play pawn to d4. Simple and strong. Strengthening our center, protecting our pawn, and stopping bishop c5. Sort of, at least. I will see why I say sort of. Okay, so black plays the most natural move for a Stafford Gambit player. Threatened mate. Mate in one threatened. Queen takes f2. What are we gonna do, guys? Maybe pause for a moment and think what you would like to do. So queen takes f2 is threatened with checkmate. So the move that you don't want to play is bishop e3. Why? Because once they capture, you cannot capture back. So you just block the mate with g3. And now black has nothing better than retreating with their queen somewhere, and you will be able to continue developing. Next the bishop can come out on g2, covering all these light squares. So let's just do, for illustration, let's say something like let's say queen h5 or queen e7. I don't know, doesn't matter. Bishop g2, and continue developing. And you can castle early, or you can postpone it. At some point you may kick the knight with h3, and black doesn't have any compensation for the pawn. Clearly he's not, sorry about that, he's not checkmating white anytime soon. Okay, so that's knight g4. I think if you just know that and play mostly moves that make sense, you will be okay and you will not get checkmated. Okay, now let's talk about knight e4. Same idea pretty much. We go d4. That's our, this is an easy system. You just know. First move e5, attack the knight. Once the knight moves, we play d4, controlling and strengthening our center. Okay, what can black do? Let's say black tries the same thing. Queen h4, threatening mate again. Now what do? You may think it's the same solution, but this loses to a trick. Any guesses? Knight takes g3. We cannot take with the h pawn because the rook is hanging. So if we take with the f pawn, black has this nasty trick, attacking the king, attacking the rook, and he's going to win our rook in the corner. So that won't be good. So in this case, when the knight is on e4, we do play bishop e3, preventing against mate, developing another piece, namely the bishop, and controlling, or rather strengthening our center. And a Stafford Gambit player might play bishop g4, ultra aggressive. We simply block and develop, and now I don't think black has anything. His bishop is attacked. Yeah, and we are not getting mated. We have fortified the f2 square. We can decide when to castle. Maybe first you can kick this knight out with some knight d2 or possibly knight c3, and yeah, you'll be okay. If you just know this much, I think you'll be okay. You'll be able to figure out the rest. Okay. Now, one strange line that was tried against my student was bishop c5 anyway. Now, think for a moment what we should do. Well, what you shouldn't do is to take the pawn, because then black has a trick. They want to take our queen, fork our king and rook, and black is not winning. White is still doing better, but we don't have to go for this. So instead, if bishop c5, we prove to the bishop that it is very stupid by strengthening our center. c3, the bishop must go back, and we continue developing. Yep, and we don't have any problems whatsoever. Yeah, so I think, let me just check, have I covered all the lines that I wanted to? Let's see. I do think so. Yeah. So yeah, that's the simple and strong response to the Stafford Gambit. So just to recap, if you don't want to remember too much, all you need to do is you take the pawn, take the knight, then go e5, attack the knight. Your next move, pretty much against anything, would be d4. So you have discouraged bishop c5, and if they attack the center with bishop c5 or c5, depending on the circumstances, you can always play c3, strengthening your d4 pawn. This d4 e5 pawn chain gives us a space advantage and limits a lot of black's threats. So the queen cannot come to f6, the bishop cannot come to c5, and so on and so forth. So, and this also represents our extra pawn, the e5 pawn. So yeah, and next queen h4, depending on where the knight is, whether it's on e4 or g4. If knight is on e4, you will play bishop e3, and going back, if the knight is on g4 in this position, you will play pawn to g3, kick the queen out, and then just develop. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Try it out in your games the next time someone dares to play the Stafford, and show them that you know your stuff. Okay, thanks for watching. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye guys.